Hello, everyone, and welcome to Life After the Military, a show completely focused on veterans transitioning from military to civilian life. Our show is powered by Pivotal Moments, a nonprofit on a mission to strengthen mental fitness for all. Go check them out at pivotalmoments.org to learn more. My name is Lee Elias, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend and co-host, Howie Cohen, and we are privileged to have today Randy and Lorie Moore. Randy is a retired senior non-commissioned officer who provided a wide range of command and control communications in both combat arms and combat support arms units for over 20 years. Randy served in several special operations assignments that included the 75th Ranger Regimental Signal Detachment, the Joint Communications Unit in support of the Joint Special Operations Command, and provided direct communication support for the commander of the United Special Operations Command. Randy is now the CEO and founder of RLM Communications Incorporated, a service-disabled veteran-owned small business he started in 2004 that provides a range of command and control communications, cyber, IT management, and professional services support to governmental clients. Lorie, who served as an Army spouse for over 20 years, worked as a home therapies coordinator for almost 10 years, and has held the position of Executive Vice President in RLM Communications Incorporated since 2010. I'm glad I read that well. It was a lot of information. Randy, Lorie, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Randy, we'll start with you. The first question, you served in the United States Army for 20 years, from 1980 to 2000. Please share what you did in the Army and how that experience molded and shaped you into the person that you are today.
Well, initially, my primary job is communications, of course, as you spoke about earlier. But what I've learned in the military, you jump in wherever needed. So irregardless of the job or the task at hand, you just support all the other soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, depending on if you're in a joint environment or not. And you just get in where you fit in. And so for me, that was many years of learning cultural awareness, learning about teamwork, commitment, perseverance, all those things combined, you learn as a part of the military, family, and organization.
So I need to let the audience know that I had the absolute privilege, and I do mean it was a privilege to have served with Randy multiple times in my career. As Lee highlighted, Randy has a very extensive assignment history in the special operations community, which is where I actually first met Randy. So he was a plank holder in the Regimental Signal Detachment when we stood up the 3rd Ranger Battalion and the 75th Ranger Regiment in Fort Benning, Georgia. That's when I first met Randy. I was down at the battalion level, and Randy was up at the regimental level in the Signal Detachment. Interestingly enough, he then transitioned up to the Joint Communications Unit that supports JSOC up at Fort Bragg, and I ended up having an assignment at JCU as well. And so Randy and I, at least for me, it was a privilege to get the opportunity to work together with Randy again. And then I saw Randy go off to take on a significant role providing direct communication support. And Randy, remind me, was it General Lindsay and General Downing, or I'm trying to remember who was the sync that, well, we used to call it SYNCSOC then. It's now the commander of the United States Special Operations Command. Who was this? Who was the commander back when you were providing that communications?
Initially, when I first went down, it was General Carl Steiner.
Ah, it was Steiner.
And coming behind him was General Wayne Downing, who we had worked for when we were in the regimental headquarters.
Yeah, so folks understand too, when we talk about JCU and JSOC, we're talking about the premier anti-terrorist organization, combat fighting organization. I will say not only in the United States military, but I would venture to say in the world. And you have all the other tier 1 units like the Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, SEAL Team 6, Task Force 160, the Ranger Regiment. So what I would love for you to share, Randy, with our audience is tell us about some of your experiences, maybe some stories of what you experienced in any one of those assignments. I think that would be really interesting for our audience to hear.
Well, I think all the assignments are very, very challenging, very rewarding. It tests you as an individual beyond all your expectations. I remember when I first got to the Joint Communications Unit, within days, I was on an airplane flying into a foreign country. I hadn't got a passport or anything yet. And they said, well, Randy, you won't need all that. Just get on the plane and load up. And sure enough, when I hit the Middle East, the guy said, passports, please. So I looked at the intel guy and I sort of wiggled my way to the back of the crowd. And somehow we made it through there. And we walked in the building, a lot of bullet holes in the building. And we walked in. I said, okay, this is going to be very, very interesting. My first assignment going out the door. But it's situations like that you're involved in. You learn how to overcome and adapt. And, everybody around you, we're all on that mission focus and we're always ready to go. But you have to always expect the unexpected. And that's just one situation where I was like, okay, so this is my introduction to the Joint Communications Unit and the Special Operations Command. But we made it.
So Randy, listen, I got to tell you this, right? So let me tell you about my introduction to JCU, right? I'm coming out of company command in the 112th, Bravo Company 112th, and I was fortunate enough to be selected as the operations officer for JCU. And of course, Colonel Rock Schmidt, then Lieutenant Colonel. Actually, he might have been Major. No, yeah, he might have been Major Rock Schmidt back then. Anyway, Rock is the commander, right? I think I had been there about 2 days, right? And you'll recall we were moving guys back and forth from Panama, and this is pre-invasion, right? Of the invasion of Panama, and so we got some folks coming back in, and Rock gives me a call and says, "Hey, Howie, I just want to let you know the plane's coming in at they'll be down at Yellow Ramp at 2:00, and this is AM." He says, I think it'd be a good idea. I've been there 2 days now, right? I think it'd be a good idea if you were there to meet the boys, right? And so I say, hey, Rock, absolutely, I'm there. So and you remember we had the little room downstairs, right? The snack, I call it the snack room, whatever it was, where, with all those refrigerators. Well, these guys come walking in the door and everybody's hooping and hollering and everybody's excited. And of course, then they start breaking out the beer. Right. It's like 2:00 in the morning, a weeknight. And Rock. And so I turned to Rock and said, hey, listen, man, so I'm going to head back home. Right. And I'll be here for PT in the morning. He says, no, man, you got to drink a beer. I said, hey, Rock, come on, man. It's 2:00 in the morning. And you know how Rock will lay the guilt on you, right? So before I know it, I'm like 4 beers into this and I can barely drive home. But that was my introduction to JCU. Okay. So,
what's funny about these stories that I love, and I always like to remind our audience, whether they served or not, that, a normal first day of work or first experience, you might not know where the pencil is on your desk or how to operate the printer. You're dropping into a foreign country with bullet holes and no passport. So the experience level for people in the military, we always like to tell people this, that, if you served in the military, you have some experiences that are going to translate to the civilian world, probably better than people who maybe haven't served. But I always love hearing the stories like that. And Howie, anytime you want to have a beer at 2:30 in the morning with me, I'm happy to do that. I just want to put that out there right now. You just let me know. So Randy, first off, I'm glad you're here, but Lorie, I also want to say that I love that you're here too. Something we want to accomplish with this show is to really highlight spouses in addition to the people that served. And anyone in the military will tell you that service is not limited to just the active duty service member. It also really affects families. It affects, obviously, marriages. It affects families in every possible way. So I have to ask you, the life of a military spouse, as we said, it's a call to duty in and of itself. So when Randy was out doing these things, when he's traveling as much as he did, putting in the hours, the relentless hours, leaving with little notice, not even having an idea if he'd come home sometimes. How did you deal with that as a spouse? How did you find that fortitude to push through? And how did you manage and handle all of the unknown so well?
Well, I've got to say, I think I was cooking dinner when I received my first call. And I believe it was Sergeant Major Niles called me and said, Mrs. Moore, your husband will not be coming home tonight. We will keep you updated when he will return. And that was it. And I was pretty much surprised because me and Randy, we don't have kids. So I said, okay. So I think with working, because I was a registered nurse by trade, that helped me get through a lot, especially during the day. Definitely loneliness set in at night because me and Randy were newly married. I think we had been married a year when we came to Fort Bragg. And it was very hard to get adjusted to things that Randy would do. Like he had a motorcycle, Yamaha 1000 that I used to have to start. Never rode a motorcycle, just on the back with him, and try to keep the battery from dying, learning how to cut the grass. And a lot of times I would run out there when it was wet. And then of course you couldn't start a lawnmower. But I think I got through, like I said, with work, with friends around me, people that had kids. I would help babysit some of my friends' kids. And so that part, I think I adjusted pretty well, with those things in my corner.
Right. There is such a support system in the military for spouses. I mean, really the community in general. I mean, one of the things when my wife served that was astonishing to me was the level of community that we found on base. We both grew up in kind of the inner outer cities, if you will. And that level of community just didn't exist in the way that it did. You heard about it in movies, leaving your doors unlocked and just coming over and say hi to the neighbor. And then, when we served, we found that. And I also like the fact that you brought up, I think there's a misconception sometimes that there are some deployments where people get plenty of heads up and there's a preparation, but that is not the case all the time in the military. There are plenty of situations like you just said of, hey, that's it. He's not coming home tonight. Deal. Or when you get orders sometimes. I remember when my wife would get orders. It's like, hey, you're going here now. Have a good day. You know what I mean? And that is a massive life-changing experience, having to change your routines, having to change everything that is normal in a snap of the fingers. And I was thankful for that experience as a spouse, because it's not something I dealt with well prior. But when you're in the military, really, we joke about being voluntold or not having a choice, but you do it for in my case, wife, you do it for your husband, you do it for your family, you do it for everyone that's serving because of that community. And again, for those people that have served, that looking for jobs, hiring people, I think I talk about this every episode. That is such an asset in the civilian world that most people probably do not experience. The ability to adapt, the ability to conform and make sure that you're moving forward for the best of the group. Active duty, obviously, showcase that. Spouses do too. And I just, again, Lorie, I love that you're here for that reason, because it really, a really quick joke. I remember when I got to base at Lakenheath in England, all the spouses had to go to this briefing. And it was basically all the wives and me. I was the only male in the room. And I remember the person speaking just at the end goes, and just remember, you can't spell hero without her. And I go, or he, like in the back. He didn't like that at all. I think he thought I was joking, but it's true. The statement is true. I mean, it really is a communal experience. Anyway, Howie, go ahead, jump in.
And listen, the other thing I want to kind of bring our audience focus to as well is this is not just about bringing on, a military veteran and having him or her talk about their transition and helping, the future folks in uniform who are going to transition. Our focus is also on the family of that veteran. So
absolutely,
we want to be able to help not only the man or woman in uniform, but we want to help the spouse of that man or woman in uniform, or the children of that man or woman in uniform. So it's great to have your perspective, Lorie, and I think it's going to resonate tremendously with our listeners. And I really appreciate having you here as well. So Randy, kind of getting back to your military service, you served for a little over 20 years. And what I'd love for you to do is kind of share with the audience how you made the decision to leave the military, how you prepared for your transition, and maybe as you look back on it and as you've learned over the years, what would you maybe do differently? What went well, what did not go well, based on what you've learned now, anything you do differently, because this would be great advice and guidance and mentoring for folks in our listening audience.
I think during those times, Howie, because I was the acting sergeant major at the 50th, sort of worked up to the last day.
Yeah. Which is very typical, Randy, right?
Not something I would recommend, but I think times have changed a little bit. I think now they're giving service members a little bit of time to transition and sort of get some of those things in order as required before they depart the military, whether it be certification and getting all your school stuff together. And then I think that's part of my DNA also. So I worked all the way up until Friday. I had a going away party on Saturday. with everybody I knew. On Sunday, I was driving to Maryland to my new job for BAE Systems on Monday. So I don't, I'm so used to not taking a break, not taking vacations, but that's just sort of how we were built over the years. If I could do it again, I would have took a little more time and prepared myself. But you know, after you serve in the type of organizations that we have served in, you know, irregardless of the situation, we're going to hit the ground running. We're going to do the necessary work behind the scenes. A lot of that's going to be done at night, whenever we can get it in on the weekends, holidays. So we're as prepared as we could possibly be. So the transition into the civilian sector, relatively simple. Like most folks that I give advice to, I had worked my network pretty hard before I had got out the military. So one of our old friends, a guy that you know, Ed Eswine.
Oh yeah.
He lined me up in Maryland. And so I was working with the special operations, the aircraft and vehicular communications platform. So he put it all together. I went up there and I think I made them proud because 3 months later, I got promoted to manager and came down here and took over BAE Systems in Fayetteville. I had all the reserves in Chicago and Los Angeles. So it was a good transition, but what it proves is that hard work pays off. And the network is absolutely important because Ed, he vouched for me with his leadership team. And part of my job is to make sure that I did not disappoint.
You know, Randy, this is such a critical point that I want to continue to highlight. And it comes up again, as Lee said, in many of the other podcast interviews that we do. But I really want to drill this point home to our audience. The value of developing your network contact list, the men and women you know that have gone before you, that got out, having their phone number, their email address, where they're working, and reaching out to them. They may not have an opportunity to provide you a position where they're working or influence it, but they also have their network, right? And someone told me years ago, you're only 3 people away from getting where you want to go, right? So the value of developing a network contact list and actively, like you said, actively work that network contact list. That's how most people are going to find their jobs, right? And the fact that you have been such a high performer and set such incredibly high standards of performance and expectation wherever you went, people in that network contact list are going to rule, you know, they're going to do cartwheels to help you, right? So I think that's a really, really critical takeaway for folks that are viewing this and getting ready for their own transition. Another piece of important advice is, you know, and listen, I understand completely where you were coming from, and that's probably more typical than it's not even today, because when you're in a leadership position, especially a senior non-commissioned officer or officer leadership position, your focus is always going to be on taking care of the mission, taking care of your unit, and taking care of your people. But I'm here to tell you that, and we've covered this before, you got to also take care of yourself and your family. And that means taking the proper time to plan and prepare for your transition and to execute that plan, right? And hopefully you'll work for a chain of command that will support that effort and allow you to do it. And I routinely tell folks, start 2 years out. Now, that doesn't mean you're, you know, it just gives you time to properly plan, prepare, and execute. But you got to give yourself enough lead time to do that. So, so listen, Randy, I want to transition to your post-military career, and you kind of highlighted a little bit of that right now. Especially because I'm sure we'll have some part of our listening audience that will want to go, or maybe are interested in going into government contracting, right? Whether federal, state, local, whatever. And possibly even considering starting their own business, right? I remember when I met with you the first time down in Fayetteville, when you had started RLM, I remember you describing to me that I think if I remember right, you had about 3 years with BAE, right? Is roughly about yeah. And I remember you telling me that was the greatest experience because they basically taught you all you needed to know to run your own business. And I would love for you to share those lessons learned, right? And maybe give a little bit more specifics around what I just said. And then also talk about what did you actually do to start up your own business, right? Because I know there's going to be people who may have an interest in maybe creating their own company. And especially if it's in government contracting, there's so much you've learned over the years. And I'd love for you to share those lessons learned with our audience.
I think you're absolutely right. I always tell folks that BAE gave me a multi-million-dollar education. And, some of my friends said, well, Randy, your compensation wasn't as high as it should have been. But for me, the glass is always half full, not half empty. And so I took what they put on the table, and in addition to what I sought out in terms of additional knowledge and how this works and how that works, and how do you compute these dollars, and how do you calculate G&A, fringe overhead, and all those things that are very important in business. And so that was the initial springboard. But one of the other things I did a lot of research. And so the Kauffman Foundation, they had a course, a business course that came to Fayetteville at night. And I took that course. And so what I did for 6 months, we went to school at night, and they brought in lawyers, they brought in accountants, they brought in contract specialists. And one of the things at the end of the course, they were going to give you a computer, they were going to give you a printer and some other small things just for completion. But that course was designed for veterans. And so I completed the course, I graduated, all this at night while I was working at BAE Systems. And so eventually I went to BAE Systems, gave them a 90-day notice. And 90 days later, again, with my story, I left BAE on a Friday. On Saturday, I was buying used furniture at the hospital, cleaning it with Lysol. And on Sunday, I was moving furniture in to my first office. And on Monday, my doors were open. And so again, we don't take a lot of breaks in the Moore family. So we just keep it moving. But ultimately, when you look at the big picture, when I started my business, there was a lot of things I didn't know. I used to be up at night doing research, and Lorie would say, hey, honey, you coming to bed? I said, no, make me another pot of coffee. It's game time. It's on now. And so those are the type of things I know if you put in the time and you're passionate about what it is you're trying to do, you'll get to where you need to get to. And I think from an economic perspective, Lorie was a registered nurse. I was a senior enlisted when I retired. We weren't hurting for a whole lot, but financial freedom, that adds a whole nother level of satisfaction, because we have family members that we help and we support and try to guide and make sure they have some of the things that they normally wouldn't have if they didn't have anybody like Lorie and myself. So at the end of the day, when I look back, I said, well, I made the right decision. Now, business is not always easy. There are challenges. You do have to put the work in. You do have to learn some things that maybe you didn't know before. And throughout my 17 plus years now, it's very hard to lose me in a business conversation. And, a lot of times I'm just that real quiet guy in the room. But then there's times where I'm like E.F. Hutton. When I speak, most people are listening because the proof is in the pudding. We've been around for 17 plus years. We've managed to go through the ups and downs, and we've met a lot of people along the way. I do have mentors, I have coaches, I have trainers, people that keep me encouraged. Every day is not a holiday. There's times where you believe the weight of the world is on your shoulders. So you have to reach out and you have to seek advice. Sometimes you even have to go to counselors. I had a group of businessmen. They used to charge me $500 an hour for their advice. And they said, Randy, we could give it to you for free. There's no doubt. They were all multimillionaires. They said, but if we gave it to you for free, you would not accept nor honor it the way we want you to. And so I did that for a couple of years, and it proved to be very, very beneficial. Sometimes you have to put something in to get something out. And so that's sort of how I ended up where I am now.
Completely agree with that last statement. We talk about the value of things, and sometimes, people don't value things if they're given to them for free. As you said, I want to tell a story too, going back to you, Lorie. I remember the day my wife joined the Air Force. It was an interesting day. We were young. I think she had just finished medical school. So we were probably in our mid 20s at that point. Flash forward to the last day of her military career. I remember she came home from Dover Air Force Base in her uniform. And that was just kind of it. That was the last day. And tomorrow she wasn't going to be wearing the uniform. And I wasn't so young anymore. And we had 2 kids. It's a very different world, right? But what I do remember is the transition process. And Randy, this is leading on what you just said about just moving from one thing to another. She was so ready to just go right away, because that's the way her life was the last 10 years. And I remember having interesting conversations with her. My favorite one was she was starting a new job, and she just kept going about, like, what if this doesn't happen? What if that doesn't happen? Which are fair questions when you're starting a job. And it just kind of got down to this, like, what if I don't like it? And I said, I had to remind her, then you just quit. And the deal is not that I'm about quitting, but the thought had never crossed her mind that if you don't like a job, you can just leave it and go to another job, because she was so ingrained in the military thinking. As a military, we don't quit, right? That's not the way it works. You can't do that. That's not an option, right? Or to relocate and find another job. So I wanted to Lorie, ask you what the transition out of the military was like for you. And then I do want to dive into both of you a little bit more about RLM, because I find it fascinating what you guys do. And I want to make sure that our audience understands that, the process of what it is to be a business owner, especially a military business owner after time in the service. But Lorie, again, back to you. Just what was that transition out like for you? Was it challenging? Did you have like kind of the shell shock moment too? Or did you have to be a rock for Randy? I mean, what was that process like?
I can remember before he took the job with BAE, I think during this transition of trying to get out of the military, that I was concerned of what are you going to do?
Right.
Okay, you're out of the military, you've been doing this for so long. But I was a little concerned about, we had been in the military so long, at least married to Randy 14 of 20. And I was concerned about not being able to deal with the commissary anymore, or the military spouses, but none of that changed. I thought it did. And I think the reason why it didn't change was BAE still was associated with military affiliation type of thing. So it never really changed for us, but I was really concerned that it would change. And I do remember when Randy took his job at BAE, I was considering moving to California, Maryland also. And you would think, just being a registered nurse, that I would just be able to go up there and find a job, but it wasn't that easy. The management jobs, and that was the position I was in, and I wanted to stay in that, I would have to almost drive all the way to DC to get a job. So I ended up staying back, and just with Randy coming home, or either me going up to visit. So that was a little transition, but nothing really changed. And I thought it was going to. So I was a little concerned, but it never changed.
That's good to know. And like I said, yeah, you bring up great points about it's the unknown in a lot of ways, right? Now, Randy, you took a weekend. That's impressive. I'm not going to lie to you. Stopped on a Friday, started on a Monday. I think that speaks to your demeanor and the type of person you are. I love that you did that multiple times. I think you said the Moors don't slow down. But here's the deal. You are a small business owner with extensive experience. Can you share how that 17 years formed RLM? You're an 8A small disadvantaged business. I think that's an important thing to note. Designated as a service disabled veteran-owned small business. How do you create strategic partnerships, with other larger companies to form those mentor-protege relationships to do business and grow?
Well, again, it was part of my network. So I knew a lot of folks. And so when I look back in the early days of RLM, I'm talking the first month or two, one of my senior friends in special operations, he had said that there was a large company that just won a contract, and it was 100 bodies, billable bodies. And so he made a phone call, and he told that individual that ran that program that Randy's at Fort Bragg. He knows all the communicators. He can get those 3 bodies that we need, and we'd like to have him on the team. And the last thing he said to that guy is, Randy is one of us. And I heard that. And boy, did that make me feel good. So within 24 hours, I got a phone call, and the guy said, hey, Randy, can you find these 3 communicators with these type of skill sets? And if so, we'd like to bring you on as a subcontractor. So that was my interest into the contracting world. And then within 30 days, I got our security clearances and You know, it took a lot of hard work, talking to a lot of people, telling them how important it was that I have that security clearance. And so it was one thing after another that just lined itself up. But a lot had to do with just that network of friends.
Right.
And then so once things started to progress, I started going to tech shows and seminars and tech nets and really, really just communicating with folks that I knew had been in business for a while, both small, medium, and large. And so they would give me pointers on, you know, hey, Randy, you're at this level. Maybe you should consider getting your ISO certification. Maybe you should consider expanding from just the radio technical guys to maybe some of the cyber work that is now starting to become very prevalent throughout the community. And so I took a lot of advice, and I just started to execute in some of those areas that people were telling me were going to be financially sound moving forward. And so with our 8A program, we were an 8A program. It's a 9-year program. We had graduated after 9 years. So I learned a tremendous amount being in the program. I was very, very blessed. The 8A program manager that I had in Charlotte, he was a former military guy. And ironically, we became his star 8A company. So anytime he would do briefings to new 8A companies, and he would ask myself, one of my vice presidents, hey, can you guys come in and brief to all the new 8A program participants what it's like to be a good 8A company, what you have to do to stay competitive, how you have to prepare for transitioning and graduating out of the program. So in that sense, we had a lot of support from the 8A program, other government agencies, and it was really a great thrill, a great ride, a lot of learning. And then at some point we became a protege in the mentor-protegee program with SAIC. And that was just a wealth of knowledge. They have some techniques and some things that they do from a big company perspective that normally small businesses are not exposed to. So we took a lot of the things that they did, we applied them into what we do on a daily basis. And so we achieved a lot of success in new areas with new data and information from our mentor, SAIC.
Yeah. So listen, if you don't mind, I'd like to just pull the thread a little bit more on this, because I think this is really, really valuable information for anybody in our listening audience who's seriously thinking about starting their own company, especially if they go into government contracting, right? So, and Randy, I want you to jump in here if I screw any of this up, but you know, especially if you're a small business, there's different categories to small businesses, right? And so if you, and again, this is probably more for folks that have a little bit more time in uniform, but the point being is, when you get out and you go through your VA process, the medical process, and you get any kind of disability compensation, you can now qualify for what's called and if you start a small business, you can now, I think you have to have a minimum of 30%. Is that right, Randy?
Yes.
Yeah. If you have a minimum of 30% compensation from the VA, you can then qualify your business as a service disabled veteran owned small business, right? Now, why would you want to do that? Well, you have these different categories of small businesses, and the government mandates to their government entities that they must support the Small Business Administration and the Small Business Program, right? So so let's just take a large organization. I'm just going to pull like the Defense Information Systems Agency, because I was very affiliated with them when I was at WACA, right? So DISA was mandated and actually graded on the percentage of business they allocated to small businesses, and specifically to 8As, service disabled veteran-owned small business, hub zone, so you have all these different categories of small businesses, and the government actually mandates that a certain percentage of work has to go to them, so that you can create actually an advantage for yourself as a small business owner if you can qualify as an 8A, if you can qualify as a service disabled veteran-owned small business, if you can qualify as a hub zone, and I think hub zone is what historically underutilized business zone, right, Randy? So it's where your business is actually physically located in an underserved area or community. that can give you a great advantage to be competitive for business that other small businesses and large businesses can't even compete for. And that's why I think this information is so valuable. Randy was smart enough to figure all this out and use it to his advantage to build up RLM. And the other thing I think is incredibly valuable, and I wasn't even aware of it, Randy, until you and I reconnected when I was with Morgan Franklin, and I spent some time with you down in Fayetteville. When you explain this mentor-protege relationship, again, this is another way that a small business owner can really accelerate his or her growth by essentially you're being mentored by a larger business that has probably achieved a significant amount of success. And this is a way you can advantage your business against your competitors, right? And again, Randy was smart enough to figure this stuff out, engage in these kinds of programs. And that's why I really wanted him to bring this information out. And I just want to continue to highlight that, because these are, I think, valuable tidbits that our listeners can take if they want to go down this path. So Randy, anything I missed here? Because you did it. I didn't. You did it.
Well, I think one of the things I would add, Howie, is the information is continuously changing. So if the listeners would continuously look at the SBA website, small business, there's going to always be a tremendous amount of information, new information, changing information that they can always do research on. In terms of the mentor-protege program, there are some advantages for the big businesses that become mentors. Some of it, they get credit from the DoD organization that the program is under, or they may get financial compensation. In my case, they got financial compensation. So I think at the end of the day, they paid them almost $1 million to work with RLM.
Wow.
Enhancing our business development, sale, how we do business, HR, finance, some of the real good ways that they do business. They brought in some of their heavy hitters and some of their subject matter experts. And in addition, part of the program encourages you to put in proposals together. And so when you have a Lockheed Martin, a Booz Allen, a General Dynamics behind you, and you're a prime, that definitely makes for a good proposal submission.
I also want to add to that, just on the mentorship category. This is more of a generic thought, but I think it's important to put out there. As a business owner myself, as someone who's been through experiences where I didn't maybe know what I was doing all the time, I always search out mentors in every realm of my life. And I actually tell my younger employees now that if you can't find someone who's done it before, you probably are sitting on a multi-million-dollar idea, and they're very, very rare, right? And I always say that, whether it was becoming a parent. I remember I had surgery when I was 17. I called someone about it, wanted to learn more. Becoming a parent. I got some very hard truths from friends that were mentoring me on being a parent. I'll just put it that way. But I was glad that I searched it out. Business, teaching, coaching, working. I always search out mentors, because at the end of the day, and Randy and Lorie, you guys embody this, but time is our greatest commodity, and we don't have infinite amounts of time. And anything you can do to reduce the amount of time it's going to take, or a learning curve, not that there isn't time that needs to be dedicated to that, it is worth quite a bit, not just money, but stress and everything, right? So I think just searching out mentors, like how he hates when I say this, how is a mentor to me? And I'm so glad that I speak to him about things in my life and business, because it helps me learn. It helps me really take the things that I'm trying to do in my life and create a better path, an easier path, or even a more poignant path to get to the destination. So I just, again, Randy, it sounds like this is something that you've always done. I just know from speaking to lots of vets that some of them feel, hey, I have to do this on my own. I got to figure this out on my own. And here's the truth, especially in business, no one does it on their own. It is absolutely impossible. Whether you're in the military, in pro sports, it's the same thing. I'm a hockey coach. You can't win a hockey game with one player. Many teams have proven that this season. Anyway, I'm going to toss it back to Howie, because I know he's got a question for Lorie.
Yeah. So yeah, I want to transition to you now, Lorie. I find it absolutely fascinating that you chose to transition to work with Randy at RLM in 2010. So what I would love for you to share with our audience is how you made that decision. And what do you do to, and I'm sure you do many things, but share with our audience what you do to help RLM thrive, because I know that's been a welcome addition to the RLM team.
Well, me and Randy discussed the decision for me to come on in 2010 full time. I always was part of the company from the beginning, but I could only go in the afternoons when I got off work on some days and, see what was going on and kind of participate. But Randy thought that me being another set of eyes on the business would be good. And plus nursing had got really hectic. I was having to travel a lot out of town and I was starting to reach a burnout stage. So when I came on, I started to help more with the families and the employees, because Randy's always been a great leader and good at what he's done with the business, but didn't have that extra time to say, hey, let's see what's going on with the families. Can we help them? And with the employees. So when I was first hired, I started with the donations and sponsorships, helping the families, help them, let them know that we're thinking about them on their birthday, sending them notes, cards, gift cards, whatever it took, for them to know, hey, we really care about you. So I think the employees appreciated that so much, because so much, especially in IT, you're just dealing with your job, the computer, it's not face-to-face and that human interaction. So that's what I was hired for at the time, to help assist with. And I think it came over very well. I also helped with Christmas parties, and if we would do like grilling out with the employees and things like that. And I think they really appreciate it when they feel very close to, their bosses. So that's what I do.
Yeah. I mean, so look, you did what we learned to do in the military, right? You created a family, right?
Yes.
That's what we did in the military, at least in the great units that we've been a part of. You create a family. And you create a high level of trust, and you show caring concern for the men and women around you. So now that's awesome. And listen, I've watched Randy take this company to incredible heights, and then with you bringing that dynamic into it, it's not lost on me why RLM continues to be so successful in the space that you're in. Now that's awesome. I really appreciate your sharing that, Lorie.
Now, for those of you that are only listening to the episode, I got to point this out. When we asked Lorie that question, Randy got the biggest smile on his face that I've seen the whole episode. He's smiling now too, but I wanted to make that because there was a lot of pride there, Randy, obviously, in your wife being involved. And, what's great about what you said, Lorie, we got to touch on this for the other business owners or people looking out there. Simon Sinek, who's one of my favorite speakers and authors, just wrote a book called The Infinite Game. And it's a fascinating book. I won't dive into it. It's a recommendation, obviously, for our listeners. But one of the things he talks about there is, Lorie, exactly what you do, is making sure that the employees and the people that are part of the team know that this is more than just a bottom line organization. We're not just trying to win. We're trying to do this together forever, right? And that, you're part of that. You're part of that team. In the work that I do personally as a team strategist, as a team builder, it's essential that people have that belief. And I think the fact that is your job, because I think there's people out there, I know there's people out there that would scoff at that. Like, who cares about that? It's the money. I've met people like that, they're just employees. That is just the worst possible way to look at anything. All right. And I think the fact that, Randy and Lorie, that you together came to the conclusion that someone needs to be in charge of this. And that even if it was that, okay, Randy can't be that person, that Lorie, you are that person, sometimes finding the person to fill that gap and to bring that family together, it is so, so valuable. It's invaluable, right? I don't see how businesses actually succeed without an aspect of family to their organization in that infinite game. Again, I don't know if you guys have had a chance to check that book out. Obviously, if you do, it's Simon Sinek again. But back to you guys. All right. This show is powered by Pivotal Moments. And we said at the beginning, it seeks to strengthen mental fitness worldwide. So we'd be remiss if we didn't ask both of you, how do you define mental fitness? And what do you do together individually to strengthen your mental fitness on a daily basis?
You want to start?
Mental fitness to me is just keeping your mind strong in any way possible. For me, it would be, I like John Maxwell. I love his books. I love, even in nursing, we would always go through a series with his information in his books. So he helps me. We would do success CDs together. Me and Randy listen to them when we're traveling, and just being around motivated people,
right,
especially with your networking. And also Insperity, which was our PEO, a company that took care of our HR information and our payroll. They were very good with helping us also too. We would have workshops, and those kind of things would help me, make it mentally.
So you pursue it, right? I mean,
yeah,
you look for it. I mean, yeah, like I want to tap on that just because I hear people sometimes say, well, like, I don't even know where to start. I'll start on the internet, start with a book, start with a speaker, it's easier today than ever. But like, again, look, I tell even my own employees that most of my employees came to me for the job. I rarely have to put a job application out there. And when I'm talking about mental fitness, I always tell them the fact that they took it upon themselves to look, to take action, that is a very underestimated skill. All right. And not everybody has it. So even with mental fitness, as you just said, you're taking the initiative to look for it. I think that's a really big deal personally. All right. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Randy. Love your thoughts on this as well.
Well, I think for me, I look for and accept the tough opportunities. So we've got a saying, one of my vice presidents, we would be at a seminar, lecture or something, and they'd say, hey, what do you guys go after? And we would always say, we go after the wicked problems, the ones that everyone else want to stay away from. And those are challenges for us. But at the end of the day, we know when we accomplish our goals and we solve a problem that somebody just decided, wow, this is just way too much for us. That's part of what we do. We bring in the right experts. We make sure that we bring the right resources to the table. And, from our community and the special ops, it's one shot, one kill. We treat everything as if we've only got one shot at it.
Right.
I don't have time to screw it up. And so that's how we look at everything. And then we make sure that our personnel and the people that work for us, they understand they're a part of something bigger than themselves. They are a part of something that they can be proud of, that other people wish they can participate in. And so we just make it an environment where everybody knows that what they do, whether you're putting boxes on the shelf in the warehouse, whether you're writing the next solution for the IT network, everybody has self-worth here, and we make sure that everybody else knows that.
Well, before I let Howie have the last word, one of the things I've been known to do on this show that's becoming a bit of a habit is I give our guests book titles if they were going to write a book. And your book title, guy, is "Don't Waste the Weekend" by Randy and Lorie Moore. No, seriously, you guys have been wonderful guests. One of the things I love about hosting this show with Howie is I'm just constantly inspired by the people that come on here, and it's no different with both of you. And I've really enjoyed the time that we spent together. Howie, I want to make sure you have time to.
I really appreciate that, Lee. And listen, how you keep coming up with these book titles is just absolutely amazing to me, man.
Right. One of them was going to be a flop, but no, Don't Waste the Weekend by Randy and Lorie Moore. It's well, listen, 2 pages because you got to get right to the point. That's the
absolutely, man. Well, you're very creatively, and I give you credit for that. But hey, I also want to congratulate Randy and Lorie. I know you just won a contract in my old organization, the White House Communications Agency. Randy, you and I have spoken about it. I am ecstatic for you. I know WACA is going to be better because RLM Communications Incorporated is going to make them better. And I hope you continue to build your footprint in there, because then they will continue to get better with the RLM Communications influence. So I'm ecstatic for you. And you know that I will do anything I possibly can to help you expand your presence in that organization. Because look, the bottom line is they have an app. We thought we had no fail missions, right? In the organizations we were a part of. Let me tell you something. WACA has a freaking no fail mission, man. They're supporting to the President of the United States, and for you to be a part of that and help them succeed, I'm just so happy for you. And I just want to personally and professionally thank the both of you for being with us today. It is a real, I think it's a pleasure to see a command team of your capability that you offer, and the example that you're setting, and the great advice and guidance and mentoring that you're providing to, again, whether it's 4 years in the military or 34 years, if people choose to listen to this episode and they're paying attention, they're going to walk away with a tremendous amount of value. So I just appreciate you guys being a part of this.
Well, thank you, Howie. We sure appreciate it. I guess for my parting note, I would say, Lorie, after 34 years, June the 6th will be 34 years for Lorie and I. So,
oh, cool.
One shot, one kill.
That is a wonderful note to leave this on as I come into our close. I want to let everybody know you've been listening to Life After the Military, which is powered by the nonprofit Pivotal Moments. And you can learn more about that organization at pivotalmoments.org. You can get inspirational content, education, or if you'd like to donate. For Lorie, Randy, and Howie, I'm Lee Elias. Thanks so much for joining us. And make sure to keep an eye out for more episodes soon, wherever podcasts can be heard. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks to our guests, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.